Welcome back to The Pen and Prosper, a podcast where we talk about writing and publishing and mindset and everything in between. I'm Melissa Delport, and my trusty sidekick, she's going to hate me for that, is not here today. JT is in Seville, or Sevilla, as she calls it now that she's actually in Spain, and she is on a writers panel. So I hope it's going well. I'm so excited for her. But yeah, time-wise, she couldn't be here. So we have a guest today, a good friend of mine and a fantastic writer, Marina Auer. Marina has written these two wonderful books, which are two out of three in a medical thriller series that is published by Kwela. And this is what I'm most excited about today, is that up until this point on the podcast, we have focused on indie publishing, hybrid publishing, and today we are diving into traditional publishing with Marina. So thank you for being here, Marina, to give us your perspective. Are you
Absolutely.
excited?
Thank you for inviting me. Always excited to chat to you.
And we do have a lot of conversations about books, don't we?
We do. We do. And kids and life and yeah, all sorts of things. Nice to have focused book time now.
Before we dive into, because your story is obviously fantastic and it's quite unique, it is so hard to get representation anywhere, but I think specifically here in South Africa for fiction, it is quite a feather in your cap. But before we dive into that, I'm going to ask you a hard-hitting question just to really shake it up. In your opinion, do you believe that traditionally published books are superior to independently published books, or that authors are any less or any more?
Certainly not that authors are any less or any more. Certainly not. I think both sets of books, trad published and indie published books, can be victims of their own systems. I mean, how many traditionally published books out there don't live up to the hype, right? So they have this huge
Yes.
marketing team behind them, and they turn them into something that they really aren't. They give the public a perception that this is a bestseller and you must buy it, and you read it and you think, well, what was all of that about? And then on the other side, indie published books can fall victims to the fact that they might not be as intensely edited as the traditionally published books. Certainly the ones that I have read, I've thought, oh, okay, that could do with a little bit more tweaking before it gets put out to the world. So I
Yeah.
can't really say one or the other. I think both have pros and both have cons. And so I'm just going to chicken out and say that's going to be my answer.
Plead the fifth. I think that there's a lot of merit in what you're saying, and I think it comes down to the budget behind it.
Yeah.
But I am a big believer of, if you are going to be an independent publisher, an independent author, you have got to be prepared to spend money on your book, because why should somebody pay for your book, pay to read your book, if you're not prepared to pay for it to be in the best condition that you can get it? So I am a huge advocate of throwing money at your project. Make sure you have the proper edits done. Make sure you have the cover properly designed. There are some terrible indie books out there, and I think that it can give indies a bit of a bad name. I actually spoke about this in a few episodes ago with JT, that having a publisher did kind of give me validation that
Yeah.
I think I've enjoyed now going forward in my career. As a hybrid, I think there's space for both. I love both forms of publishing. They come with different challenges and different pros and different cons. Now, obviously, for you, the indie world is not even something you would consider, although I think you are certainly smart enough to navigate it, is because of your day job. So shall we just touch on that? Because being an author is not actually what you do.
I mean, being an author is what I'd love to do, but I don't think I'd want to do it full time because
Yes.
if we were to talk about my process, I really need about 2 to 3 hours a day to get my 1,000 words out and done. And then after that, my brain starts to get mushy, and then I don't really know what to do with myself. So I think I'd like to still keep my day job, but yeah, if you don't know what I already do, it's I'm a medical doctor and I work exclusively in a theatre environment. I assist various specialist surgeons, and so my schedule is always at the whim of an emergency, and I've just got to make a time for writing whenever a slot arises. So because of that, I just do not have the time to take on a third job. So fourth job, being a mom is a full-time occupation as well. Marketing, distributing, everything
Yes.
that the traditional publisher takes care of for me, I would not be able to do that.
The fact that you are a medical doctor who does work in a surgical environment is very clear in your book. Double Edged in particular has that cracker start, doesn't it? It's a very interesting scene about a potato. How much of your life do you pour into these books that you have written?
Definitely for the first two, the environment in Double Edged is carbon copy of where I work, and a couple of the real life people that I work with are represented on the pages there. And Single Minded is taken from my time as an intern at Edendale Hospital back in the, giving my age away now, back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So those two are very close to home, and
Okay.
some of the characters there are really quite representative of people in real life. My next one going forward is a more fictional setting, more fictional characters. What I did with the first two was kind of learn the ropes. They liberated me and allowed me to break free from writing what you know, which is always that
Yes.
first advice that you get, to starting to rely on my imagination and feeling confident enough to create scene scenario settings that weren't necessarily ones that I had lived through and experienced.
Yes, that you weren't familiar with. I'm excited for that. When can we expect book three?
So I'm working on the second page proofs now. So that
Okay.
is like one of the final steps. And
Are
it's
we close?
this is so close. And I
Oh,
start to
lucky.
get a little bit anxious around now because every word you think this is the last time I'm going to get to correct this comma, and if it isn't done right
Yes.
now, then it's going to go to
Yes.
print. And I'm such a perfectionist that once my books are printed, I don't read them because I don't want to know that we've missed that comma in the wrong place.
Yeah, the perfectionist and author, we don't want to know about those little typos. And they slip through, I think, no matter how you publish.
Absolutely.
All right, so you are published by Kwela, a division of NB Publishers, which is quite a feather in your cap because attaining a publisher here in South Africa, as we all know, is very difficult. Fiction, especially, is a hard sell. And you got a 3-book deal with Kwela, didn't you? Off the
I did.
bat.
After Double Edged. So I published Double Edged with them, and then they offered me a 3-book deal. Stevlin, my publisher, knew that I had 3 manuscripts lined up, and
Okay.
she took them without actually reading them, which I thought was very brave of her. But yeah, so
Yes.
after Double Edged was published, then I got the 3-book deal with them.
So let's talk about your submission process. So you wrote this book, in between surgery and motherhood and baking and cage fighting. And for
Yeah,
all of these interesting facts, I think I've got an interview with you on my website, Personal Punt
yeah.
there, that people can go and read all about. But tell me about your submission process. So, I mean, you wrote a few books before you submitted, I believe. You didn't just write the one, hey?
Some good advice that I had probably picked up from Stephen King's book on writing a memoir of the craft was that you just keep writing. Even if you're submitting one book, you don't put all of your focus into that. You need to just carry on writing. So I finished Double Edged, and then I thought that it would be best to try and get an agent to get it out into the international market because the South African reading, especially the South African English reading market, is so tiny that it's not financially viable to just publish in South Africa.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get myself an international agent, and I was getting battered and battered.
Yeah, we got to have a thick skin.
Most agents don't even bother to respond. Those that did respond, some were complimentary. You write well, but it's just not a right fit for my clientele. Keep trying, but no one nibbled. Then I went back to the drawing board and I thought, okay, well, why am I not looking at South African publishers? I first approached Tafelberg, which is an imprint of NB. Heard nothing back from them. Went back to writing my second novel, still no nibble, no one even asking for, a full copy of the manuscript because that's the process that you would go through is to send a sample, to send a synopsis, and then you're supposed to hear back and they say, yeah, can we read the rest of it? Never even happened. So then I saw Kwela, which is also part of NB, and I thought, okay, well, I haven't heard back from Tafelberg. They're part of the same organization, but maybe I'll just try them. Probably 6 months down the line, got the email back from Kwela to say, oh, we're interested. But a very provisional, we're interested. We're going to send your manuscript to the next stage, which is to get an external reader's opinion. And if the external reader thinks that it's something that's publishable, then we will maybe take it further. But
Not
changes
committing to anything.
not committing to anything. It really is a very beneficial, scary because it's telling you everything that's wrong with your
Yeah,
manuscript and
yeah,
no
nothing that's
one
right with it.
exactly. But I just held on to the opening line of that letter, which was, I really enjoyed reading this manuscript. And I was like, okay. But then it launched
Yes.
into all the criticisms, which were like, I can't fix this. I'm like, this is terrible. Why don't we just scrap this entire manuscript? And I was overwhelmed with the number of changes that they were suggesting. And I had always imagined that you write your book, you send it to the editor, and they fix it. But no,
Yes.
it came back to me for me to fix. So then I dived into it, and what a learning curve. And just to take a step back, when you get those editorial comments back, you kind of like, oh, you go through I say the 5 stages of grief. You go through anger, denial, negotiation. Do I really need to change this? But I knew that what the external reader had picked up were genuine issues. I had known
Yes.
that the book out there, but I just hadn't known how to fix them.
So did she give you suggestions on how to fix what she was pointing out, or was it all on you now to go and do a deep dive?
All on me, all
Oh,
on me,
no.
which is huge, right? But at the
Yes.
same time, gosh, am I grateful that someone else didn't have the good idea of how to fix it, because I wouldn't have felt like a writer then. Fixing those problems that I had created, the
Yes.
ownership of mine. I
Yes.
own that, because at that stage I wasn't feeling like a writer, huge imposter
Okay.
syndrome at that stage still.
From submission to book on the shelves, how long was that?
Oh, from submission when I first put it out there in the
Yes,
world
when
to
you
book. I think, remember we spoke about this at the book launch, and I think it might have been 3 years, because I think no, maybe 3 years from when I started writing it.
maybe
Maybe.
18 months from 6 to 8 and then a year to prep and shelf.
Yes, yes, probably
So
that
it
long.
is.
If we're comparing trad to indie, that's one of the things that traditional publishing, with all of the steps and all of the people in the process, takes a long time, right?
Mm,
I have 3 manuscripts lined up that'll be published 2026, 2027, 2028 if we're going at this rate, which seems incredibly slow. Part of me feels like, oh, can't we speed it up? But then I know my capacity to take on a book launch, the book festivals that come after it, the interviews, the book
yeah.
signings. There's only so much that I can do. So maybe spreading them
Yes.
out annually actually isn't a bad thing.
With this lag of let's call it a year, in my mind, then traditionally published authors are less inclined to write to market because within a year to 18 months, the market has changed again. It's one of
Uh,
the pros, I think, of being indie is that you can write to market because what's trending now, you can ride that wave now, get onto it. In a year's time, something's changed, you're shifting. Do you think that that's something you would ever want to do? Do you think it does you a disservice as an author to not be able to jump on, say, the dragon train or whatever's trending at that time? Um, or even
doctors
technology, do
on.
you feel your book gets a little bit outdated in terms of, because especially now with things changing so quickly, so if you've released a book 2 years, written it 2 years ago, and it's coming out now and it doesn't mention, say, something like AI, and you go, oh, I'm behind the curve on that.
Mm.
Do you think that time does is there any sort of disadvantage of the longer process, or do you think it's fully advantageous? Like, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I am aware of it because my upcoming one is sort of set just before one of the COVID lockdowns, and so it dates it, and you do wonder, are people going to be interested in reading about that time? But at the same time, it dates it, so it puts it into a certain category, so people know that you
When
know
it's set?
when it's set. Chat
Yes.
GPT isn't a thing in 2020, so as long as I think it's appropriate for
Clear.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
it's clear and appropriate for that.
And
Just
writing to market, that's normally, anyway, it's more normally in your fantasy and your romance genres,
yeah, I'm
where
thinking
things
here,
are
doctors,
driven.
Doctors Without Borders,
Yeah.
Doctors on Dragonback.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, all right. So we have spoken through your submission process. Tell me about when they finally came back with we are going to be publishing your book. Was it kind of anticlimactic because the process had been so long to get there, or were you doing the jump up and down celebration? How was that feeling?
No, you nailed it. Quite the anticlimax, because you second guessing the process the whole time, but you do think, okay, well, if they put this much work into it already, they've
Yes.
already started investing, right?
I-
It would be unlikely at this point for them to say thanks, but no thanks. And I
Yes.
think as well that it's almost a test of your ability if they have sent you this editorial letter to say, okay, these are the things that need to be fixed. And if you show that you're willing to change your issues, if you show that you are willing to work with the suggestions, if you are someone that the editor can work with, then I think that they're more inclined to take you into their fold, right? If I had said, oh no, the manuscript is perfect as it is, I might tweak this and I might change that, but the rest you're going to have to live with, they might still have said, no, no thanks.
So I think that it's important that we put our egos in our pocket. You know, writing is a solitary craft, but publishing, and whether you are traditionally published or independently published, you're working with people, and you have to be able to play nice. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
And also there are people that know more than you. I mean, for years, JT Lawrence told me that my Guardians of Summerfeld covers were wrong. In fact, she was so brutal that she asked me what genre the books were, and I said the urban fantasy, and she said, "Why don't you tell your covers?" And I dug my heels because of that, you know, that arrogance, but I like the covers. I paid a lot of money for them. I think they're so nice. And anyway, she finally convinced me to change them last year. And if I showed you the graph of sales of that series since I changed those covers, I mean, I hate to
Really?
admit that she's right, but
Yeah.
oh no,
Yeah.
like significantly, just because now people know what they're looking at. So
Mm.
sometimes people do know more than us, and I think we have to be open to critique and to change things, to do the extra work to make something good, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are almost out of time, but with this whole traditional publishing conversation, I think it's important for anyone who's watching. What advice do you have for aspiring writers or anyone who's wanting to be traditionally published, especially here in South Africa, the steps they should take, manuscript preparation, submission guidelines, those sort of things? Like, what is your recommendation?
Well, you've got to finish the book. I mean, you got
What?
that's the first thing. No one wants to look at an unpublished, an unfinished manuscript, right?
Yes.
So that's the first thing is that don't even think about the next step until you've actually finished your book. You've got to put your best version forward. And sometimes you don't know what that best version is, but it's not a once-off process of doing your first draft, coming back, revising it a little bit, and then submitting it. It really is multiple rereads, multiple tweaks, and getting to the point where you think, okay, I can do nothing more with this. And then knowing that the South African market, South African publishers are probably only going to publish books that have got a South African flavor. South African publishers are very much focused on South African flavored
Yes.
novels.
Yes.
Right.
And this
Okay.
is like, it has been for years and years and years.
So if you're not writing a book that's set in South Africa or with South African characters, then you're probably going to have to look at getting an agent for the international market. There's plenty of material out there of how to formulate a query letter, which agents to approach. There are websites dedicated to it. The agencies all put their agents on their websites and they tell you what they're looking for, when they're looking for it. So you're just going to have to dive into that entire world. If you're looking to be traditionally published, I don't think that would be worth your while to get your manuscript privately edited
Okay.
because it's a really expensive thing to do. So you're going to have to decide from the beginning, am I going to self-publish, in which case I'm going to plow money into producing this book, or am I going to go traditional publishing, in which case I'm going to make the best version of this manuscript, and then the publisher that I get, they're going to put their resources into editing, and then everything else that
Yes.
happens
Yes.
that covers.
Or at least go through your submission process before. So if you traditional is your first goal and India is your second, then submit it, wait, and only if it doesn't work out, then go and spend the money and move into an indie sphere.
Yeah.
I just want to add that I have seen, again with the author arrogance, some people, they want to do submissions. So they do a submission letter and they do a generic, this is my submission for this book. And then they just send it out like that. Whereas every single publisher has a different guideline. This one might want it double spaced, and this one might want it in the body of the email, and this one might want it as an attachment, and this one wants 3 chapters, and this one wants 10 pages. And I think that if you don't have the respect for the guidelines
Mhm.
to submit as they've requested. I think a lot of the time, if I was a publisher and I received a submission that I could see was sent to every publisher around exactly the same format, I don't think I'd read it. I'd be like, well, if you don't respect me enough to follow my guidelines,
Yeah.
I'm not going to consider your manuscript. So I think it's important to read each individual publisher's submission requirements carefully and to follow them to the red letter.
Absolutely. I think it's
Um,
like we were saying, that those editorial recommendations, that's almost like a test. Can you work with the
Yeah.
publisher?
Yeah.
That's following
The
their
first
guidelines.
test.
Yes, it's a first test. Like, are you reading? Are you someone that's going to work with us, or are you going to be someone who's going to butt heads against us?
And the other thing is, I've seen new writers kind of go, I haven't decided whether I want to traditionally publish or independently publish. And yes, that is a decision as a writer that you need to make. However, it is not always your decision. So you need to decide which method you're going to pursue. But that's not to say if you decide I want to be traditionally published, that's not to say that you will become traditionally published. And I
Yeah.
think if you truly want your book, I believe in your book, you need to be kind of open to the fact that if one plan doesn't work out, it's not to say that your dream is over. There is the indie route, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah, it used to be that if you went the indie publishing route, then a traditional publisher wasn't going to look at you ever again down the line. But
Yeah,
we have
not the
seen that
case.
it's okay. If your book does really well, when you've independently published it, the publishers do want you.
Yeah, I still love the hybrid model. And I did a submission 2 weeks ago to Bookature, and I'm actually submitting something this week. So I'm still very much open to submitting if I feel that something works better. And also just with the overwhelm, I really like the hybrid approach. All right. Well, we don't have much time left, but I did want to talk about bookstores. Being traditionally published, obviously one of the biggest pros is that you get into your big stores for very obvious reasons. Bigger bookstores they don't take independent novels. They want books that are on the larger distribution platforms, so direct from the publishers, which I think is a good look. They have to gatekeep somehow. They cannot quality control every book that ever comes out and read it and is this deserving. So I do completely understand that process. So firstly, what does it feel when you walk past a bookstore? And I mean, I have walked past the Bargain Books in Hillcrest, and you have been up front and center in those windows. When you see your book in stores, I think is the real, like, I did this. I have actually made it, and here I am. So how does that feel, and how has it been? And does it get, as you go along with each book, does it get a little bit less exciting? Or, yeah, tell us.
It's such a weird feeling because I don't know, because I have so many different roles that I play. I put each role almost into a little box, and when I look at my book in a bookstore window, it's real and not real at the same time. I don't know how to describe it, but
It's surreal.
surreal. It is surreal. But going back, you have all of these expectations of like publication day, and you think that there's going to be champagne and sparklers and someone standing outside the bookstore blowing a trumpet saying, "Oh,
Yeah,
Marina
yeah.
Auer's debut novel is on the shelves." And I had told everyone that this was going to be my publication day. Look out for it in the bookstores. And on that day, we were all ready to go out and go to the nearest bookshop and find it on the shelves. Wasn't there? Wasn't
Oh
there?
no. Oh no, did the stores not
So
unbox it that day?
it was not unboxed that day. They didn't get
Oh,
the memo. That was publication day. So that was the first experience. It's like, whoa, that is what a letdown. Like what an anticlimax. And everyone's been told. So they didn't get the memo that there was this like big event happening, that it was my publication day. And then with the publication of the second one, I think the publication day for that one was going to be the 4th of August, 2024. And I have a thing for numbers. So 4th of the 8th, 2024 seemed like a good number. It's like an auspicious number. It has the right,
everything
the
is
right
just aligning.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I started getting messages to say, "Oh, I bought your book on the 28th
Oh
of
no.
July.
So
It's
they
not the
jumped the gun.
publication. It's not the publication day. Take it back." It's someone else's schedule, right? And so
To
now it's
have
just like,
to have a release be big enough to be an embargo. That's the goal, okay? Your book has got to be such a global sensation, then it's have it under embargo until
yeah.
this very day arrives.
And people are lining up at midnight to go
Then you
to the
will know.
store. Then you'll know. Yeah.
Because of your day job, and did you ever consider writing your books under a pen name and keeping it a secret, or no? Was that never going to be?
No, I don't love my name as an author's name. I think it should be a little bit more zesty. But because I am writing so late in life. I kind of own my name
Yes.
now. And
Yes.
I think it would have been an awkward conversation as well. What is your pseudonym? Getting people to remember it. I do have a
So,
very loyal following in my colleagues, and so
mhm.
keeping it my name, the name that they know me by.
That's kind of what I was meaning is that did you ever think there might be any sort of
Blowback?
blowback if you had mentioned something in your book that might have got you in any way into trouble at your job, if that makes sense?
Oh, well, I mean, that whole scene in Double Edge is not a scene, actually. I'm not talking about the potato now because I think those identities are well hidden, but there is a mention there of a hospital matron found in a compromising position in the car park with a certain cardiologist. And at the stage that I wrote that, the hospital matron had already left the hospital and the cardiologist was working at another hospital. And I thought, okay, well, they're not around. They're not going to know about this book and I never have to see them face to face. Well, blow me down, didn't that cardiologist come back to the hospital? Anyway, I don't think that he's read the book, but it's out there in the world. But there's no names. I do tweak scenarios, but I have become a little bit more careful going forward,
Okay.
not use something that is too close to home.
I
Yeah.
think I think author insertion is a lot more prominent in our first works. So back to the bookstores, right? Sorry, we've
Yeah.
deviated completely, and I did want to ask you. So yes, we get our books into stores, or you get your book into stores because it's traditionally published. One of the biggest pros and perks of having a traditionally published book, whether they on a launch date or not, you are in stores, you are on shelves, people are taking pictures. This is so exciting. But then there is this trend in South Africa, and I will say that up here in Hillcrest, I don't see it as much, and I think that they are fantastic, the bookstores up here. But there is this trend to just take all the South African published authors, no matter what they are writing, and putting them on the shelf that they like to call South African fiction. And
Mm.
I want to kick the shelf over when I see it because why? Why is your book not with
Wow.
the medical thrillers? Why is it with Jock, or not Jock of the Bushville, but it's
Yeah,
lumped in
Jock of
there
the
with the
Bushville
romance
sisters. Yeah.
and the romance and the everything. And
Yeah.
who, looking for a medical thriller, is going to find you over there? Just put us in with our international counterparts. We're as
Yeah.
good. So,
Yeah.
what is your take on, as we call it, the naughty corner?
It's a tough one because I'm so grateful for bookstores for even just putting me on the shelves, right? And they
Mm.
do a lot to promote us. Um, is it the legacy of South African fiction being of a certain ilk that we are still living with? At one stage, South African fiction was very literary heavy, very politicized, and that is the image that I have of South African fiction,
I have a
and I
very
rub shoulders.
clear idea of what I
Yes,
will read if I read South
yes,
African fiction.
yes. And I rub shoulders with other South African authors, so I know that not to be the case, but that is still the legacy, the stereotype that I have in my head. It's even worse than saying that it's a South African fiction shelf. I have seen African fiction shelves, and
Oh,
Africa is
wow.
a huge, huge continent, huge continent.
I'm pretty
And
sure that I would never visit my mother in Australia and stumble upon an Australian fiction shelf in their books, in their bookstores, or American fiction in America, or in any other continent or
no,
country.
and in America or Australia, they don't have a little shelf squeezed into the back saying Australian fiction, here's the rest of the world.
Yeah,
American fiction, here's the rest of the world. I mean,
yeah,
that's just
that's
ridiculous, right?
prominent. Yeah. I do
Yeah.
wonder if the marketing department, just to give the benefit of the doubt for a hot minute, I do wonder if they think they want to highlight it so that we can support it.
Supported at the front of the store. If you walked into the front of the
Mm,
shop where all of the books are facing you
interesting.
and on a lovely little display, and look,
Yes.
Exclusive Books does do that with Homebrew, but like Homebrew is also a marketing thing. I know there's all sorts of things going on behind the scenes. That's one of my frustrations is that perhaps the reading public thinks that books get to where they are organically because they're so good. No, books
Mm.
get to where they are in a bookshop because of the amount of money the publisher has put into marketing those books.
You're right. It's not all based on merit or skill or
No,
talent, or
no,
sometimes it's how
not
much money
organic.
you're throwing at it. Yeah.
Yeah, marketing forces are manipulating the public the whole time.
Markets. Yeah.
You've got to know that. You've got to know that if a book is in a certain celebrity's book club, it has been put there on
Yes.
purpose. She has
Yes.
gone into the bookstore, picked up a book, and thought that, oh, this is a great book. I'm going to talk about it. It has been
Yes.
their publishing company has given it to her and maybe even given her a substantial sum of money to make it,
To make it
earn.
happen. Yes. And one
So
day we'll be able to do that, but today's not that day.
yeah, but
Today we rely on our readers.
yeah, and part of me resists that. You want your book to organically be thought of as good, right? I don't want the reader to be manipulated into thinking that my book is good. I want it to get there organically. Is it an unrealistic goal in this day and age? I don't know.
Food for thought. I think you and I have been banging this drum for years. I mean, I
Yeah,
remember at your very first book launch, we were talking about the self same thing. And I think slowly, I mean, I've noticed up here in Hillcrest, like I say, they don't really do it to us anymore. I think they were there at that launch and they probably went back the next day and dismantled that. And we were so
yeah,
vocal about it. They were probably like, let's just
yeah.
take this down. I do hope that one day that shelf is completely disbanded and that we are just there in and amongst our peers from whatever country they may come from.
And the other side of the coin is that I know we're running out of time, but the other side of the coin is that bookstores are under incredible threat, aren't they? Like physical
Yes.
bookstores are under threat by the online bookstore. We won't mention them by name because we don't want to give them any advertising. But physical bookstores are under threat,
Yes.
especially your smaller ones, your independent ones. And so they
Yes.
have to make money. And how do they make their money? By the easy sales, which are the
Big international sell themselves kind of things. Yeah.
yeah. So I understand. There's always two sides to that story, right? So
Yes.
yeah, we just got to, as South African authors, we've just got to keep on writing to our best ability and make sure that our books
Compete
are competing.
on that
Are
on that
competing.
international level, yes. And also
Right.
to just, I think, appreciate our readers. I spent so many years of my career trying to get into the American market and trying to get into the UK market. And yes, our readership is small. They unfortunately just don't have the numbers to make sure that we are going to become as wealthy as authors overseas. But I have recently discovered South African Book Talk, and they are a nice bunch of people and happy to spend money on books and to support. So I think, yeah, to find our audience and to just, yeah, keep plodding on one word after another.
Yeah. I'm
Anyway,
just putting it out there. Yep.
yeah. Okay, well, Marina, I think that is all we have time for. Thank you so much for being with us. I do hope that you will come back. We have kind of said that on weeks where one or other of us are not available, instead of putting it on hold, we will get guests in and just have a chat about different things, different skill sets, different experiences. So I do hope you will come back. We maybe do something when the next book is coming out, because that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
So do we have any sort of indication?
Oh, it is the 27th of June, but as we've discussed,
Could
June,
be any time. I guess so
27th of
June.
June is like yes, June, late June.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll be nice. Or even if we do something in July to kind of see how it's going and how it went. And
Awesome.
okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much and have a lovely day.
Thank you, you too. Always lovely
Okay.
chatting.
Yes, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye.